Today, we're unpacking an absolutely chilling narrative, a supernatural horror mystery titled The Mirror of Dharan. We are going to explore the complete chronological sequence of events to really understand exactly how this story builds its paralyzing tension. We'll be breaking down this incredibly desolate, cold, almost blue-gray cinematic setting of Dharan. It's this remote Himalayan village that, according to the records, was never supposed to be forgotten. So let's trace exactly how a 30-year-old mystery violently intersects with the present day. To really grasp the events that unfold, we first have to establish the foundational lore hanging over this isolated settlement. The villagers in Dharan knew a terrifying truth about their home, and it was simply this: the mountains around the village weren't empty, they were listening. And you have to understand, this isn't just some atmospheric detail to set the mood, it's a literal rule of survival in Dharan. There's an unseen presence here. The environment itself is actively hostile to anyone who lives there. Okay, let's dive into this. Because the villagers rigorously followed 4 grim survival rules every single winter when the snow trapped them in. Rule 1, lock your doors before sunset. Rule 2, cover all mirrors after midnight. Rule 3, completely ignore voices outside, even if they're calling your name. And 4, the absolute most critical rule of the entire bunch, never open an eastern-facing window after midnight. As you'll see, these aren't just silly superstitions, they are vital defense mechanisms. This foundational war kicks off a pretty sinister timeline. On October 17, 1996, a local woman named Meera vanishes. Her body is never found. Exactly 3 days later, the deadly knocking begins. We're talking 3 distinct knocks on windows after midnight, accompanied by Meera's voice begging to be let in. Now, most people ignore it, but one man, Aarav, actually opens his window, and he vanishes. Jump exactly 30 years forward, and Arav's grandson, Aarav, arrives in Dharan looking for answers. So what sets Aarav on this path? The inciting incident is actually an inheritance. After his grandmother dies, Aarav inherits Raghava's property in Dharan, but instead of some warm family history or a nice letter, his grandmother leaves him only one ominous, solitary, handwritten sentence: "Don't go there after dark." Now, naturally, Aarav completely ignores this. He packs his bags and heads right up into the mountains, setting off a horrific chain of events. Aarav's arrival is immediately unnerving. I mean, picture this. He endures a tense, foggy drive up a desolate mountain road with a tight-lipped driver named Mohan, who clearly knows way more than he's letting on. When Aarav finally gets to the paused, totally childless village of Dharan, he meets an old shopkeeper named Dev. Dev doesn't even greet him. He just hands him an ancient 1996 photograph of Raghav and Meera, warns him to turn back immediately, and tells him his grandfather left him a warning, not a house. But Aarav hikes up to his grandfather's dusty house anyway. Inside, he discovers Raghav's old diary, which finally reveals the sinister events leading up to that 1996 tragedy. According to the diary, Meera heard a voice in the forest and went to investigate. Raghav noted that he didn't think she was the one calling them, so he followed her. And here's the kicker. The diary reveals the villagers were lying about Meera running away. Raghav actually saw her vanish just outside the house's eastern window, and she wasn't alone. Which brings us right to Aarav's first night in the house. Imagine being totally alone in heavy shadows and pouring rain. Aarav has locked the doors, just like you're supposed to, but then he hears 3 heavy footsteps on the second floor. He checks the time, it's 11:57 p.m. He tries to just laugh off the paranoia, but then, shattering the silence, he hears 3 distinct knocks on the eastern window. Aarav stands there, completely frozen, just staring at the curtains. From outside that window, a voice calls Aarav's name, but it's not just any random voice. It's the voice of his grandmother, who, remember, died 3 weeks ago. When Aarav asks who's there, the voice outside perfectly mimics his dead grandmother before suddenly shifting. The tone deepens, gets younger, and turns into the terrifyingly familiar voice of Meera, delivering a simple, horrific command: open the window. The window starts shaking violently, but somehow Aarav manages to resist. We transition to the next morning, and Aarav's close friend Tara arrives. She's furious he disappeared without cell service. But that's not the only reason she's there. She came because Aarav's late grandmother made her promise to never ever let Aarav go to Dharan alone. You see, she was carrying a terrifying secret about Aarav's grandfather, Raghav. When Aarav asks what actually happened to his grandfather, Tara drops a line that completely shifts this entire story from a simple cold case mystery into something actively, purposefully malicious. She says, She said he was still waiting. Let that sink in. Raghav isn't just dead and gone, he is trapped in some form, actively anticipating Aarav's return to the mountain. And this brilliantly illustrates what they are actually up against. Tara and Aarav visit the village priest, who finally explains the lore of the mountain. He tells them about an entity known simply as the Listener. It's an ancient presence beneath the mountain that learns voices, memories, and fears, and then flawlessly copies them. This perfectly explains those terrifying knocks and the corrupted photographs Aarav and Tara found earlier, where Meera's face is scratched out, but an unknown baby has these pitch-black eyes. Returning to the house, Tara and Aarav find an ancient cassette tape left behind by Raghav. The tape is heavily distorted and super eerie, but Raghav manages to leave a desperate set of paradoxical warnings for his grandson. First, don't trust Dev, the shopkeeper, because Dev helped hide the truth. Second, if you hear Meera, she is trapped, she's not the monster itself. And third, absolutely the most chilling warning of all, if you see me, don't believe me, because I don't know which version of me will be waiting. Using a hidden brass key they found, the two of them descend a narrow, rocky staircase into this cavernous underground chamber completely carved with symbols. Right in the center is a wooden chair, some candles, and a carved phrase reading, "She is not the one who knocks." From there, they follow these small, bare footprints deeper and deeper into the darkness until they reach a heavy stone door. Now, what's really interesting about this next detail is the sheer psychological terror of it. Inside the room, they find a dusty mirror, but they immediately notice something impossible. Tara's reflection is standing completely still, just smiling, while the real Tara is frozen in absolute terror next to Aarav. And then, the reflection raises its hand and knocks 3 times on the inside of the glass. The mirror suddenly cracks, and the real Meera's face appears behind the glass, frantically mouthing the words, "Run now." Out of the pitch darkness behind them, a man appears. It's Raghav, Aarav's grandfather, looking exactly as he did 30 years ago. He gently asks Aarav to come to him. Aarav almost steps forward, but Tara grabs him, reminding him of the tape. "If you see me, don't believe me." The man realizes they know the truth. His skin literally stretches, his jaw unhinges, and he speaks with Tara's voice. "Aarav, come home." Suddenly, the candles extinguish, plunging them into pitch-black darkness. Aarav hears Tara scream, and then she's just gone. Aarav desperately flees down the corridor until he literally runs into the real Meera, and she reveals a devastating, horrifying truth about what really happened 30 years ago. Raghav wasn't just copied by the Listener. He was the first person it became. The entity has been waiting all these years specifically for Aarav, because Aarav is the first person in the family who can hear it without being copied. It actually needs Aarav to help it leave the mountain. Aarav scrambles back to the surface, but reality has drastically warped. Everything is suddenly covered in this eerie winter fog. He checks his phone. The date reads October 17th, 1996. The village is suddenly populated with dozens of people walking around in old-fashioned clothes. Meera explains that when the entity gets close, time essentially forgets itself. Aarav even sees his grandmother exactly as she was 30 years ago. She smiles warmly and warns him not to trust the woman before completely vanishing. Think about the absolute psychological torture of this next moment. What would you do in this impossible scenario? Aarav sprints back inside his house, only to find everything perfectly clean, set exactly as it was 30 years ago. Sitting calmly at the table is a young, alive Raghav. He tells Aarav that Tara is safe, pointing right at the eastern window. But outside in the freezing snow, Tara is screaming, pounding on the glass, begging Aarav to open the window to save her. Tara knocks 3 times on the glass. Aarav is desperate to save his friend, but Raghav physically grabs his shoulder to stop him. When Aarav demands to know why he can't save her, Raghav delivers a chilling command, because that's not Tara. So Aarav decides to test her. He asks Tara a trick question about his favorite movie, a secret only the real Tara would know. The figure outside answers it perfectly. Trusting this, Aarav ignores Raghav, reaches out, and unlatches the eastern window. And the horrific climax unfolds in a split second. The window opens, and the trap springs. Aarav grabs Tara's hand, but it is freezing cold. The young Raghav inside the house completely vanishes. Meera suddenly appears outside, crying, telling Aarav that because he opened the door, the entity can finally leave. Tara slowly turns to Aarav, and her eyes turn pitch black.
Aarav broke the ultimate rule. He sprints out of the house, breathless, tearing down the mountain with dozens of silent villagers watching him, until he miraculously manages to flag down Mohan's bus on the desolate road.
So the crucial point is right here. Aarav thinks he's finally safe as the quiet, empty bus descends the mountain. But then, Mohan asks him a terrifying question. Did you open the eastern window? Aarav looks to the back of the bus and sees Meera sitting there in the shadows. She just points a finger forward. Aarav looks into the bus's rearview mirror and is horrified to see his own reflection smiling back at him, even though he is definitely not smiling. The reflection raises 3 fingers and then knocks 3 times on the glass from the inside. He did not escape alone.
Which brings us to the epilogue. The official record stated there were 37 people in Dharan, but the villagers always insisted on an exact number, 36. This was the historical, unchangeable population of Dharan. There were always exactly 36 people.
Until Aarav came back. 3 days later, Mohan's bus is found completely abandoned on the road. No driver, no passengers. Just one single item left on the driver's seat, a 30-year-old photograph of the village. But this impossible photograph contains exactly 37 people, including Aarav, standing right among them, doomed to remain part of Dharan's dark history.
The source material leaves us with the sound of 3 slow knocks and a whispering voice saying, Episode 2 will begin when he remembers who he really is. It is a phenomenal cliffhanger that perfectly summarizes the complete psychological collapse of our protagonist. Aarav didn't just unleash the entity, he was consumed by it. And that wraps up our chronological deep dive into this incredibly eerie story. So what piece of the puzzle do you think Aarav has yet to remember? We're gonna have to wait to find out.